Critical Path, Greater Vancouver Realtors professionalism and innovation-focused podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Lalime. Each episode, we sit down with industry leaders to discuss the critical issues affecting our profession and the paths we must take to overcome them. The real estate landscape is constantly evolving and shifting. It has to, because it's intricately tied to so many aspects of life: technological advancements, government policies and interventions, even global events. And that changing landscape also alters the behaviors and expectations of the home buyers and sellers you serve. So how are you preparing? Not just for today's challenges, but for what's coming next. Today's guest on the Critical Path is Ashley Smith. In our chat today, we'll explore the broader forces reshaping the profession and what those changes mean for realtors and how to make the kinds of decisions today that'll put you in stronger position tomorrow. Ashley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, it's really great to have you. You've got quite a history, not just in organized real estate here, but with GVR itself. Mm-hmm. And I'll let you explain a little about that to set it up for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So I was a realtor for 18 years and served on the board of directors back when GVR was Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. So I served on that board for quite a long time and was chair and at the time media spokesperson back in 2019, 2020, kind of leading into another interesting era as well. Yeah, so saw a lot of changes over that time, and I would say that my involvement in leadership with GVR actually heavily influenced the things I pay attention to now, thinking about the environmental, like the landscape in the business, how things are changing. But yeah, then I went on to serve on the BC Real Estate Association's board of directors, and then kind of pivoted my career. So, but a lot of hardworking people here, and I'm glad people are tuning in to talks around innovation.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've been at the board almost as long as your real estate career lasted. So I'm just shy of my 20 years here. So I remember very vividly when you were our then president. That was the other change from REBGV to GVR.
Yeah.
Back in when presidents were presidents and now they're chairs. But yeah, like you said, you were really involved at the leadership level, and that's kind of shifted or been part of the shift in your career now. So tell people a little bit about where that's led you.
Yeah, I think, when you get involved in conversations that are centered around an industry, like a sector, an entire membership, you really have to sort of zoom out and look at like what are the macro things happening and like how are the professionals, how does that maybe change business practices? How does that change the dynamic between associations and their members, and what are the values you can add? And so, I remember even back in 2012 talking about what blockchain technology might mean for real estate. That really interested me. And so actually during 2020, 2021, when those sorts of technological advancements were becoming a little more mainstream and accessible for people like me who are not like technically tech people, I took a dive in and really got involved and started getting involved in some startups and realized that there's a lot of interesting things going on. I want to be paying attention. I think it matters. I think it matters to professionals, particularly in traditional sectors, to be paying attention to how some of these things might impact their opportunities, their business models, and most importantly, I think consumers and consumer behavior. So certainly these things are connected, and my area of focus has changed over the last several years as well.
Tell us more about what you're doing
more
now.
Specifically in the AI environment. Mm-hmm. And, I'm always a little bit hesitant to talk about AI as like the leading thing, because I think, first of all, it's very trendy to talk about AI. And I think it can also be a little bit scary, because for folks who either don't really understand it or have certain opinions about AI and what it means for society, et cetera, and even the output, like AI slop and all the noise and all the quality of content, for example, that's coming out. And so for me, obviously I'm paying attention to the tools and I'm using a lot of them, but I've been thinking a lot more about how the introduction of AI is changing how people are getting information, how they're trusting, how is trust declining in many ways, and then how is that impacting how they're trying to vet professionals, for example. or vet content that they're reading, or vet information that they're getting. And so through, AI search and how we're changing our behavior with like having full conversations with our devices now more and more, right? Like asking our phones, whether through ChatGPT or Claude or even now Google. And I think people underestimate Google quite a bit, but like, we're giving a lot of personal information, and we're really looking for personalized answers and solutions or recommendations or information that is very particular and catering to the questions that we're asking. So I think all of these things intersect. I think it has a major impact on how professionals like realtors, who are such high trust professionals, where there's a lot of monetary involved, like there's a high financial commitment when you're working with a realtor. How are consumers vetting people, and how are they going online? What information are they finding? And so I know we'll dive into a bunch of this stuff, but these are all the questions I've been asking myself.
Well, and it's great because these are, we wanted to get into what's really shifting right now, and technology is clearly kind of at the forefront of that, right, for both the realtor and the consumer. It seems almost like it's a little bit of, and this has been going back, through time with, say like something where you read something in the newspaper and you say, well, I read it in the paper, it must be true, right? And now with all of the content that's out there, a lot of this AI generated content, people are maybe applying that to what they're seeing in a way that isn't really doing them justice. And so speak a little bit more about the AI kind of side of things, because you mentioned it's a bit scary, and I think that goes on both sides.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we have to recognize is like, this thing is happening, right? And so there's this sort of
not going away.
It's not going away. And so what does that mean for you? But certainly I think that our attention spans are lessened, like because of all of the content that's out there and really trying to hijack our attention. So there's that part. But then just that piece where you don't really know if what you're seeing is something you can trust. You don't know if video is something you can trust. That used to, I think, really be the be all end all. Like if you see a video, it's legitimate.
Somebody put some time and effort into that. So
yeah.
Right?
So I don't know if that, for me, these things, I think just impact how we look at the world in general, right? I think we're a little more skeptical, and because of the way that technology is changing, we also now have everything at our fingertips. So when those two things intersect, I think it's a very different type of leap than, for example, what we would have seen early in my real estate career, where social media was entering the space, right? That was more about attention, maybe around connection and how people can communicate and connect. But this is really something that I think is fundamentally shifting how confident we are in people, how comfortable we are in decisions that we make. From the real estate point of view, as an example, just to kind of bring it back to my point of view, where I really started seeing this take shape is because of the involvement I've had in the industry. I do get people asking me, for referrals. I get people asking me for recommendations for realtors, whether in Greater Vancouver or outside. And I know a lot of really wonderful professionals who I know personally and I trust, and I know that they're really good at what they do. But, when you're sending a referral, you send their contact information, you send maybe their website or whatever. And what I started noticing is, as these search mechanisms were changing, as I'm looking people up, I'm starting to get sort of subpar sort of underwhelming results for people who I feel are the best of the best. And that's where I realized, okay, like even people who are really good at what they do and are very professional and maybe even very specialized, if there's not that if that's not captured when you're looking them up, there can be doubt. And how does that even me, as the one who knows them, I'm like, are they not as good at this thing? And then I thought,
just because of what you're reading, that it's on the internet, it must be true.
And right? I'm still sending the referrals along, but I'm also recognizing that, people are also going to be vetting these professionals. Like even if there's that trusted connection there, they're still probably going to look up that person. And so am I handing them somebody who actually clearly is strong in their where they need help, right? Not just in a certain geographical market, but with a certain type of, service, for example. And so, I think we don't even notice ourselves and as our own behavior is changing as consumers, not just as professionals, but what is it that we need when we're looking for things? And so I think some of that is just the inherent trust side that's changing. And some of it is like, what are we looking for to be able to validate the things we need to feel confident about working with somebody or whatever. So there's a lot of things happening at the same time. And when you start putting economic pressure, political geopolitical uncertainty, and all these things, I think that sort of tension altogether can create an environment where people really want to make sure that they're making sound decisions.
Yeah. And when it comes to the market kind of being down as it's been for a while, is that kind of just I don't want to say status quo, but is that just kind of like the typical kind of market forces that are really at play here? Or is it really more to do with some of what's happening, like, again, globally and down south?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that. I think it's kind of all of the above, and it depends on who you talk to. But my experience has been that Canadians in particular are pretty cautious. And so when there's not a lot of when there is uncertainty, it's not uncommon to take a pause or to just be extra careful with what decisions are made. But I know when you look across different markets, not just in Canada, but even in the US, there are markets that traditionally are pretty active that are not so much right now. So
Some of that's just cyclical,
Yeah.
right? So I guess really the trick is, for a while, things are a little bit slower. What are some of the things that realtors can do now, given some of these challenges that are in front of them, to really position themselves, for anything from, being ready for the next deal that comes through, to how they're presenting themselves online to get through some of the filters that these AI things are maybe kind of constraining?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody's practices are a bit different, right? So when you think about lead generation as an example, even 15, 20 years ago, the way people there are various ways to be successful with that. So I'm going to, say that out loud first. And I think it's really looking inward and recognizing, okay, like what are the areas I'm really strongest at, and like when it comes to technology, like what am I comfortable adopting to help streamline certain things, to add more value to the consumer experience. But the thing I'm thinking about the most right now is really around value proposition. And so, like, if the market is where it's at and there's only so many deals to be had in a certain month, as an example, like how are you putting yourself forward as the right hire? And I think that a lot of people outside of real estate are probably thinking a little bit about this, is there's job uncertainty, a lot of layoffs and things that are happening with tech, streamlining things in businesses. It's like, how do you figure out how to be in that top 20%? Like the people that are the clear go-to professionals that are worth paying to either, serve in a certain service or stick around and keep as like a strategic leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is actually, again, back to that macro thing. This is something I think that's happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for folks who've been in the business for a long time, thinking about like, how are you positioning yourself around your specialty? Like, how are you showcasing, whether it's in a way that feels a little more modern, if online, or back to basics, just more belly to belly and through your network? Like, how are you explicitly showcasing like the skill set, or even if it just happens to be trust. Like
Mhm.
if your thing is just like people trust me.
It's the number one thing, really.
Right. But trust has so many different pieces to it. Like you trust this person because you know they're going to serve you well. They're going to look out for your best interests. You know, they're, going to tell you everything that they know versus do you trust them to be able to make the best decision surrounding a certain type of property? Like, do they have the expertise? Like there's different areas of trust, right? But I think that I don't know if this is an appropriate thing to say, but I think a lot of real estate practitioners, myself included in the past, like really positioning themselves a little bit too much as generalists because you're capturing like, I work with home buyers, I work with home sellers, I work in
You have to
this
wear a lot of
market
hats.
there's a lot of hats, but where are you really? Where do you really shine? Whether that's a market area or a certain property type or a certain part of the transact, like what is it that you're really skilled at? And I think that when consumers, whether they're right or wrong, if there's customers out there that think that they can kind of push back against the professional that they're working with through an AI, through ChatGPT, like, is this the best approach or is this the right price? And like people maybe modeling their own economic kind of forecasting or, reviewing contract clauses. Like, this is where I think people have to be really clear on making sure they are professional and getting the education they might need to fill any gaps, number one. Because I do expect to see some of these things challenging some practitioners in the future. If a client like runs their contract through an AI to find something that, well, I want to break this contract, I'm going to find the hole in this contract, right? Sorry.
I was just going to say, because that was actually, you're getting right into my next question, which was going to be about the other side of that value proposition, right? The value proposition on the realtor side needs to be clear, needs to be focused, right? But on the consumer side who's receiving that value proposition, like in terms of what clients, are maybe expecting today or have it in their toolbox today that they didn't have a few years ago, it sounds like, the AI is what's kind of driving that for them as well, right?
Yeah, and I think, there's probably people out there that think, oh, my clients don't really use it, right? And maybe that has been their experience so far, at least in a meaningful way. But I'm really, I know we're talking a bit about like where the market is right now, but I would encourage people to zoom out like 2 years from now where things are going to go, right? So your client doesn't need to be paying for a pro version of these more sophisticated or these LLMs, right? They don't need to be subscribing to and paying for these things. A lot of this stuff is coming to Google now. And so as the regular everyday consumer starts realizing that they can be having these full-on engaged conversations and just through the same search bar that they were using 2 years ago, like how does that change things? And this is not to fearmonger, and I haven't seen it play out yet, but Google they have like a big conference where they announce all their big changes. And this is where I think it was in May this year where they announced that they're leaning heavily into AI now for search. They're no longer really prioritizing like all the people having to go through their own links, link ranking and website ranking the way that we're all kind of accustomed to. It's sort of the biggest change in their search function in 25 years. But the big thing that I don't know that people are recognizing is that Google is now starting to implement agents. And so I don't mean agents like a real estate agent. I mean like agentic assistant type of technology. It hasn't rolled out in our market yet. They're starting to test it in some bigger markets in the US. And the example they used at the conference was specifically around real estate.
Really?
Yes. And so they specifically were referencing like Zillow and just the function of search. Okay. And so I can give you the link to people can watch this if they want. But basically, what they're saying is that these Google agents you can now like search for properties through, and I don't know what that looks like yet. In my mind, I'm like, Google owns maps.
Mm-hmm.
They have all this data. It's like, okay, if I'm a home buyer and I'm thinking about not just bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, but like I'm thinking I want to be this many minutes away from this school or this retirement center or this hospital, and it needs to be close to the daycare, like all the things that someone might
Right.
say they need. And if our own data systems aren't flexible enough to like also provide those searches, but the thing is, it's like a live agent in the background that will ping and prompt the user like, oh, a new listing's come up. So I haven't seen in real life what this looks like yet, but it is being rolled out, right? And so I just would encourage people to be thinking about, okay, first pay attention to the landscape, see what's happening, because this is going to matter. It might matter. But also, as this tech evolves, how much of it starts in layering over top of this thing that I think is my value proposition, right? And so from the consumer side, to your question, like what are they expecting? As all these things are changing, it'll be interesting to see the adoption and how people use these tools. And it's hard, I think, in real time to say what matters today. But I think it's more about what's going to matter as this stuff is changing very quickly.
Yeah, and with this stuff happening now,
Yeah.
where is the opportunity for the realtor here?
Mhm.
Like, because you were talking about the zoom out, right?
Mhm.
And where things are going to be in maybe 2 years. So again, just touching on this change of preparing for the future, where is the opportunity in this kind of a coming landscape for the realtor to stand out and to really make that value proposition shine?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a few different ways. I mean, when we go back to how you might be discovered or vetted, I think there's a huge opportunity for most practitioners right now to take a look at how do they show up online. And I don't just mean what does your Instagram profile like feed look like.
Or do you come up on the top of a Google search?
Yeah, frankly, the Google ranking stuff matters less and less. So if you're paying to like rank high, start thinking about, is that good enough? Because that might not be getting you in the answers that these AI tools are surfacing. But like go to Google, like or ChatGPT or whatever. But I still think Google is kind of the easiest for everybody. Go into an incognito private browser and then like Google yourself and go into AI mode and see what it says about you, right? So that I think that's number one, is see like where are you right now? Does it
Pulse check, right?
Pulse check? Does it gauge the depth of what you do, or is it generic? Is it vague? Is it outdated? Is it not seeing something? And that can help you. But I think for people who do have specialties, even if it's not the only thing you do, but if it's one of the things you do, if it's one of the reasons people pick up the phone and call you, how can you start getting that stuff online in a meaningful way that's discoverable? And maybe eventually in a way that where you can be recommended, where someone doesn't even know your name. Like that's the ultimate goal for anybody. But I think if you can simply get yourself in a way where if you meet someone at a happy hour and you tell them about what you do and what your focus is, and they go later that evening to look you up and they don't find what you've said you do in any meaningful way, I think there's a problem. But the opposite thing is if they look you up and they find something that makes you look pretty extraordinary and really affirms the stuff you said you're good at, I think that can have a huge impact. And I don't believe a lot of professionals are thinking about it from this perspective right now, and that's where the opportunity is. So for folks who've been around a long time, who have a lot of expertise, who can clearly, and we can talk about how to do this if that's interesting to you, but like who clearly have something special that they bring to the table, capturing that stuff and getting it online is not that difficult. And you don't have to be like a content creator to do that. Now, for someone who's newer in the business and is like, okay, great, well, I'm new, like, what am I going to do? Because so many people aren't doing it right now, there is opportunity to lean in and showcase what you want to be good at and document how you're figuring that out, right? Now, on the flip side, like the AI tools, not just how do you show up in AI, but, I do think that a lot of people are finding interesting ways to, add efficiency and streamline and create more content and all that stuff. But I think that if you can tie together your expertise with the AI tools you're using, so understanding your voice, understanding what it is exactly you're trying to message, and not having like generic stuff added to the noise that's out there, but something that's very original. And
That kind of stuff is identifiable for people now, right? You can kind of see the lack of authenticity behind it.
yeah. I mean, the authenticity thing is one thing, and I appreciate like when you're on social media and you're creating content and you're trying to get you want to be in people's feeds. That's a different thing, right? That's an attention thing. That's people see you, they might subconsciously associate you with more modern practices, more a better capacity for marketing, which might be interesting for people who have something to sell, right? But that may not necessarily be, if they're a buyer, that may not necessarily add trust unless they just happen to really like you. But where the opportunity lies in, I think, is really showing that depth and that skill. And
Yeah. So this conversation really about kind of preparedness and being prepared, it's been pretty tech heavy as we've kind of gotten through it, a lot about the AI and a lot of those kind of things. What would you say to a realtor who feels kind of overwhelmed by all of this change, who's expressing some kind of trepidation about, I don't know if I can do this? Like, what would you say to somebody who's kind of feeling nervous about this new landscape?
Yeah, I think a few things. One is if you're feeling nervous about it, but you're nervous because you have a career that's been sound and now you're unsure. I mean, obviously you have all the fundamental stuff that most people would love to have. I would imagine, right? Like if you've had a career that you've been able to stay strong and you have clients, that means
base,
yeah. I mean, so actually those folks are the ones who I think if they can find just a few key things, and they don't have to be difficult and they don't have to be technical, those are the people I think that can actually really shine. They just have to become more comfortable with shining, I think. And so, whether that's like you may not be competing with some of the other stuff. Like maybe you're not changing your workflow. You're not adopting a bunch of new tools. Like that's just not who you are. But I still think you need to, how do you take that strength that you have, that experience, and get that out there in a way that people can see it. And so whether that's through an article once a month, go through your emails, like what are the questions people are asking you, synthesize some of that stuff into observations. That's where if you do use AI, it might be able to help you, right? One of the tricks I use for people is like hop on a Zoom call with a colleague twice a month and have a chat. Like you don't even have to publish it. Like I do think there's value in that too, but that can draw out what are your observations in the market? What's the thing you're seeing in your area? How did you help somebody last week, right? And if you don't want to publish that stuff anywhere, you can still take the notes from that and turn that into something meaningful, like a LinkedIn article or a blog post on your website that digs more into the nuance, right, of how you think, what you're paying attention to, what your values are, right? And so that part doesn't have to be hard, but I do think choosing and understanding, like, what is it that you want to highlight for the world to see? Now, for the people who are more interested in, they want to adopt some of these tools, but they're still nervous. I mean, I think it's about simplifying and choosing one thing and figuring out like how you can sink your teeth into it. And if that happens to be, how you might use an LLM to help you get better, like enhance and improve and strengthen, the stuff you're putting out into the world, or even if it's related to the communication you have with your clients. Like there's a lot of different things that people can do. And for people who are new, I think the interesting opportunity is for people who have less experience, but more less fear around some of the technology, like to find those mentors who've been in the business a long time and figure out like, doesn't mean you have to partner up in business, but what kind of activities might you be able to do that are complementary? So if you're that new practitioner and you haven't been able to prove, you're an expert yet, maybe the Zoom call I was talking about, maybe that's that younger practitioner with that mentor and having an interesting 20-minute conversation a couple times a month. And then maybe that younger person is willing to say, hey, let's pop this up on YouTube or let's put this in a podcast, because now all that data's out there, the titles, the descriptions. And the point is, like, from when, the thing that keeps coming to my mind is the work that I did with the board, the theme throughout my entire experience from beginning to end was all about professionalism and how to enhance professionalism and how can we help the consumer see the professionalism. And in my mind, some of these things actually are now new, sort of simple avenues and pathways to being able to show that professionalism versus just marketing. Because I think a lot of the times marketing can be seen as self-serving, overly promotional. And I understand why it's done, like, and where it needs to be done. But where professionals might be able to start capturing the thinking, the judgment, and even the value system, like what people care about, I think it can help add trust back into a landscape where, I think the industry has always struggled a bit with trust, but I think we're at a special time right now where trust is just harder to come by anyway, regardless. So I think there's different ways. And I think by not thinking so much about what are all the different tech tools we can use, but like, how can I enhance what I'm doing now and ideally make some of it a bit more discoverable?
Yeah, because, to kind of, to wrap things up, usually we ask people, our guests, about, what's one thing you can kind of recommend people do or people start thinking about. And it sounds like from the conversation we've had here, it's really just raise your awareness level, right? Raise your awareness level of your online presence, of the technologies that are available to you, of what's happening with the market, and just kind of pick one area to focus on, right?
I absolutely think so. And I think, again, the reflection moment is like, put your consumer hat on. Like, if you were hiring somebody where there was a reasonable amount of money and trust involved, how are you thinking about that? Like, what are you doing? And even if you're, going through more traditional channels where you're getting, a referral for a person or a business, like, still, how are you thinking? Like, what are the things you expect? And how are you, how have your expectations changed? Like, just generally, and that has nothing to do with technology at all. Like, and then B, how are you ensuring that, you're entering, hiring someone, for example, with the most confidence as possible, and then just turn that mirror on yourself and think, okay, why might this matter? How might this matter for me? What am I doing? Right. And some of this might be, sorry, I'm not going to go down another rabbit hole. It might be just how you show up in your services, right? Like, we haven't talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
Like, people can be really just doubling down on their customer care, right? And that might be the answer
That's
to
their
some of this
calling
stuff.
card, right?
And if, like, referral systems just aren't as strong as they were before, it's like, okay, well, then how do you become that person that is just more likely to be referred and trusted without the other stuff? Because I think previously referrals were a little bit more kind of who you knew or what networks you belong to.
Right.
And I just don't think that's enough for consumers today. So, like, how are you showing up? How are you proving that you are, like, really focused on that client care stuff? So anyhow, a lot to think about, but yeah.
And, again, as a natural spot to wrap up, the other thing that we wanted to make sure we touched on here, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how the summer's just flying by. This podcast will hit the ground in August, and we're going to be about 1 month out from Pacific West. You're going to be presenting there. Tell us a little bit about your session and what attendees will be able to expect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited. So I'm really looking forward to the event. It's a great event, by the way. It's getting better and better every year. I'm going to be speaking a lot about this visibility in the AI search era and how to enhance your visibility. And I'm really looking at it through the lens of practical ways that realtors can enhance their visibility in AI search. So even if you don't really understand the technology at all. The language I've wrapped around this is really around proof, how to show your proof, and the proof gap and the disconnect between, how you show up in the real world and how people find you online, and that credibility factor, how your credibility shows up. So I'm going to dive into some easy strategies that I think most people can at least consider or try or adapt for themselves, and hopefully do a lot of Q&A as well. So
that just elicited some memories of like high school math, where it's like show your work, right?
Yeah.
And show your proof is your website where you're exploring a lot of the proof gap and those kind of things. So that's going to be something I think you'll be touching on as well at your session, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Ashley, thanks again for a really enlightening discussion today. There's lots for our listeners to unpack here. And if you're interested to hear more from Ashley, I will tell you she's one of over 50 speakers at Pacific West coming this September 28th and 29th. So if you haven't already registered, go to pacificwest.ca to learn more. And you can learn more about Ashley on her website, showyourproof.beehive.com. And that's with a unique spelling.
Oh, here, I'll interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
You've got to.
You can go to you can go to showyourproof.co, or you can say that if you want.
Showyourproof.co. Well, that's easy enough, I think, for most people to get. So you can learn more about Ashley there too. Ashley, thanks again. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Jesse Lalime. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you down the next Critical Path.